Okay, so we're gonna do another one of these quick and easy videos that don't have a whole lot of editing. So you get to look at me again. But hopefully I'll give you some gameplay a little bit later. Well, I still can for next best. But the game so far has been a lot of fun. I think that it's really good. I talked about in my other video how I like it. I have a lot of hope for it, and also that it does certainly seem to do what it set out to do, at least for now. We'll see what changes get made in the future, but I think they're on the right track. So, on to more individual things. I think that the medic right now is looking a little overtuned. I'm sure these things will be refined, but I know that specifically vanguards are weaker. They have a much worse win rate versus infernals. So the numbers seem to point towards infernals being the one that's overtuned. But hear me out here, because on an individual basis, I feel like the medic is too impactful. I feel like the medic is the most important unit that the Vanguard has. And I know that people have been pointing to the EXO for a lot of that power. The EXO certainly does add a lot of power to Vanguard, but they would not be what they are if medics weren't so strong. I've certainly tried to run comps that are very EXO-centric, and they don't work out so well. They're too squishy. They need the front line from the Lancers, and the whole thing stays alive only because the medics are so good at their job. But it's not just the healing, right? Because that's kind of like the medevacs in StarCraft 2, where the healing adds a lot. Yes. But the bigger deal is that they have a couple of other abilities as well, and that's the Nanoswarm, in which it either repairs an allied mech unit in a radius around it. That's fine. I think giving some sort of mobile mech healing is valid. I think the way it sets up the dynamic is good, because that's one of the things I feel like in StarCraft 2 mech lacks, is you have to drag SCVs everywhere, and SCVs aren't really made to be used in that capacity. So it's they can really bog down an army and everything. And mech play is fun. It's fun to be able to choose, do I want to do this, do I want to do that, do I want to mix and match, which is something I'll talk about in a second more specifically with Infernals. But I think it's good that it has an ability that can heal mech units, especially since it functions different from Bio, so they don't just feel like a universal healer. The medics play differently in a mech comp than when they're in a bio comp, and that's really interesting. But I think the problem comes in that third ability, because it's a massive speed boost. It functions on both bio and mech. It cleanses the target, which makes it like the perfect healer in every situation. It gives just universally good support. If your enemy is using debuffs, cleanse them. If your team is too slow, speed them up. If your enemy has mech, nanoswarm them. And if you have mech, nanoswarm it. Like, it's so broadly applicable, and I think the medic just in general kind of overshadows the Sentinel. I've barely played the Sentinel, and that's because I don't need the Sentinel. The Sentinel gives some sweet buffs, but the medic is very, very potent and way easier to access. I think mech is still really fun, and the medic is a part of that. So I think that's a win for the medic. Just maybe mess with the numbers a little bit. Maybe the speed boost is fine, but maybe a smaller amount, or maybe I don't know if some of those abilities need to be shifted over to the Sentinel to make it a more impactful tier 3 unit, while keeping that idea of making mech viable. Anyway, Infernals are so fun to play, and one of the reasons why they're so fun to play, and I do say one of the reasons because I think there's a lot, but one of the reasons is that you can really diversify how you play. I really like the mechanic of being able to build an Iron Volt or Conclave, which means there's a varied opener you can take. And when it comes to late game armies, you can really mix up your tech. I will say right now, there are certainly clear, strong units, and the Magmadon is one of those. The Magmadon, I don't think it's overtuned. I think it feels really good. In fact, I was just playing a match, and I think that it comes down to a lot of micro for the Infernal Army. Like the if you just take like a bio ball and do some simple kiting as a vanguard, you'll get pretty far versus Infernals. But with the Infernals, the engagements have a little bit more nuance. Don't send all the units in all at once. You have to have a nice mix so you get the infest going. Make sure you're hitting the right targets. And that honestly is a lot of fun. But I think that they become stronger than Vanguard in their ability to just swarm and overwhelm, especially with how explosive their production can be. So, in most of the games I've seen, the Vanguard player has to really keep the Infernal player down, otherwise their economy will explode, or they will hit them with just an overwhelming force, just because of that ability to burst out production, which is a super fun mechanic. So I don't think that's the place where it needs to change. I think it's going to be troublesome to balance them, but who knows? It might not even be imbalance. It could be just that Vanguard players don't know how to counter it yet. Community's general knowledge tends to rise and bring up the stock of certain techniques as they get figured out. That kind of tends to be how it works in RTS and other games, honestly, but yeah. So let's see. The Magmadon is strong but not overtuned. Hellborns seem undertuned. I do think they're really cool. I think they're almost there. I think maybe there's probably a small change. Maybe not to their attack speed, because that I think the slow fire rate is a part of their design. I think probably just a small damage buff, because the fact that you can have 9 of them just blasting away at a bio ball, and the bio ball just doesn't really care, is genuinely quite brutal. Like, eventually it will whittle you down, but I don't think it's too far off, though. I know that there are some people who are saying the unit sucks. From the perspective of a Infernal player, I think the Hellborn is almost solid. It's a mobile, very long range unit, and if you make it too powerful, it will break the game. For sure. But I think it's nice to put pressure on, get a little bit of splash damage going, and if you're targeting right, you can make sure that you're hitting a wide cone as well, which just kind of softens everything up for those other units to hit. So I think that they're almost in a good place. The Spriggans are really cool. I like that they're not crazy DPS dealers, but instead that they have this debuff to them. It makes it interesting because they're very different from, say, the Hornet, which is like a clearly an air-to-air unit that can shoot ground. I do think the Hornet is probably also overtuned a little bit still. It was even more so before the Elephant Beta went live, I believe. It was what I was hearing. But it's funny that I keep picking on the Vanguard units as overtuned units, because again, Infernals is the stronger race. I think that that one race being strong doesn't necessarily mean that a unit doesn't need refinement. So And I think that has a lot to do with their explosive production. I think it's really easy to overwhelm in the early game. I think actually once you get to late game, the Vanguard player has an easier time of it. I was just playing several games where I was trying to play some late game Infernal and see what kind of army control it takes to overtake a Vanguard, and I was able to make it work. The Magmadon is crucial. I don't think the Magmadon is overtuned. I think maybe some other units are undertuned for Infernals. Individually, units speaking, the whole faction together is quite potent. But yeah, I'd love to see some sort of mechanic that allows you to repair your structures or units. I would like to see it be different, the Vanguard. Maybe like sacrifice Fellhogs for HP on your buildings, if not for your units, because you can still heal your units with a health camp, a healing camp. But anyway, maybe the intent is to leave it with absolutely no healing, like that's just the Infernal way. Always full steam ahead. And that could be interesting too. I just think it's an annoying mechanic when your tower is getting chipped away at or something like that and you can't repair it. So anyway, late game army though, it feels like the pressure is all on you. Yeah, I hope they balance that mechanic to make sure that Infernals aren't stuck playing just early game, and Vanguards are just like, oh, turtle up to late game. Because I think it's interesting when it's a back and forth, and both people can vie for the later game. So I think it's almost in a good place though. Magmadons are huge. Hellborns are a little undertuned. The Hellborn doesn't do enough damage, but I don't think it needs to do too much more. It could probably become very oppressive if it were a high DPS with its range and mobility. So I think it's almost there. I can't wait to see what the third faction brings for changes. I don't know if I got all my thoughts out there, but I think that's where I gotta end it. I hope you're enjoying Stormgate, and I hope that this channel can bring you all the Stormgate content. Anyway, that's all my thoughts for now. I'm sure I'll have more soon, but just wanted to get it out there. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.